train in peacetime so you're ready for war.
Dory 1, this is Fire Team Delta. Dad's coming home. Welcome to the Military Veteran Dad Podcast, where it is our mission to bring every dad home. I am your host, Ben Killoy. I'm a United States Marine veteran, husband, and a father. We will bring authentic conversations to inspire action in your life so we can close the gap between the dad you are today and the dad you want to be tomorrow. This is the Military Veteran Dad Podcast. Welcome back to episode 74 of the Military Veteran Dad. I'm your host, Ben Killoy, and if this is your first time listening, you picked an excellent episode to drop in and see what we were doing here on the Military Veteran Dad. Be sure on whatever platform you are listening to this podcast on that you hit that subscribe button, because we don't just launch one show a week. We launch 2 shows a week. We have the interview show on Monday where it's a dad, an expert, someone that has value to teach other dads. But on Friday, we have Fatherhood Friday, where it's just me on the microphone sharing some lesson that's on my heart, maybe a feeling that's on my heart, a perspective, a story that I've had in my life that's helped me become a better dad, or maybe it's just a moment where I fell down and I had to learn how to pick myself back up. So be sure to hit that subscribe button, because those 2 episodes can really change your week, because that Monday we're going to inspire you to step into your week, and on Friday we're going to help give you that closure, to give you that excitement and energy to go into the weekend and be a good dad. And that's the feedback that I get, that Friday is that just push that the people need to get into the weekend. It's that kind of like last minute momentum that they need to step in to be an awesome dad. Today's episode with Remi Adeleke is going to transform you. And there's a couple puns intended there, because Remi starred and acted in Transformers movie directed by Michael Bay. He was inspired to be a Navy SEAL by the movie The Rock, which was also directed by Michael Bay. He is the author of an amazing book called Transform. There'll be a copy of that in the show notes if you want to click the link there for Amazon. And if you have been listening to the podcast for a little bit, you know that I've been kind of under my own transformation. And this book is what helped ignite that. And if you want to hear more about how that book has helped me, stay tuned at the end of this episode, because I'm going to be back on the microphone to share a little bit about how that book has helped me, and also a little bit about how I want to help you move forward in your life to be a better dad. So without further ado, let's get started with Remi Adeleke, and I'll see you on the other side. Welcome to the podcast, Remi.
Hey, what's up? How you doing? Thanks for having me on.
I appreciate it. I just wrapped up your book a few weeks ago, and I kind of kicked myself because it sat on my shelf for almost 2 months. And then when Corona hit, I was like, I'm going to make sure I can cement a reading habit in the morning during this time.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm going to start with his book. And your book, it hit me really hard, right square in the chest for what I was holding back myself on. And then also just like the story and the growth that you were able to experience through your story. Like that was just an incredible version of all that. So I really appreciate you for putting yourself out there. I know that was a little bit hard. You write in the book that you almost didn't make it. And I can imagine like that it's probably like a crazy thought looking back now, like how did I not almost do this? So I really appreciate you writing it, and I appreciate you coming on the show. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about what your family looks like right now and a little bit about your story.
Yeah. So my family right now is, I'm married, been married for going on 9 years. I got 3 sons. Caden, Caleb, and Carter. My oldest is 6. My middle is going to be 5 in June, and then my youngest is a year old. And then my wife is pregnant with our 4th child, which is going to finally be a girl.
Congratulations! Life will never be the same when you have a daughter.
Yeah, that's what I hear. And so got that, and my wife, she works as well. She's a doctor, and then me, I'm a writer. That's my primary job. I'm not a Navy SEAL anymore. That was my old job, but I'm a writer. I'm a speaker, and I do corporate and consulting as well as athletic consulting. But I'm a filmmaker as well. So most of the majority of the projects that I work on now have to do in the film and TV space, as either consulting on a project to bring that authenticity to it. Acting, acting in Transformers, acting in film on Netflix called 6 Underground, or now writing films and TV shows. I just got hired this week to adapt a book into a limited series. So, I would consider myself, as a writer, filmmaker. So that's what I'm at today.
When's your daughter going to be born?
October.
October?
Yeah.
It's gonna be a crazy world for it. I can imagine after reading your book, like it'll be a surreal moment when you hold your daughter in your hands because of
Yeah.
the impact that women had in your life
Oh,
and
absolutely.
your ability to shepherd your daughter through her life. It's a
Yeah.
surreal feeling when you recognize the power of what you have. Like I just saw a meme the other day, like to a son, you want to be their first hero, and to a daughter, you want to be their first love.
Yeah. Amen. And that's a good one right there. I agree. Do you have any girls? How many girls do you have?
I have two girls. I have she's 8 years old and 3, and then I have a son right in the middle.
Oh, nice. So you already know the deal.
Oh yeah, I already know the deal, the wild string of emotions, and I was also the middle child, so I had an older sister, a younger sister, so I know how to empathize with my son who doesn't have a brother, but he's got friends in the neighborhood he's been playing with. But yeah, life as a dad is something that, like, I'm sure is your story. Like the last thing that was on your mind probably was being a father. Like you don't actually talk about it that much until towards the end of like idea of starting a family wasn't even like a checkbox for you that you were worried about filling it, right?
Yeah, it was never a thought to me. It was never one of those things where I was like, and it wasn't because I didn't think I could have a family. I would say it was more so because I was just so busy with my career in the military, and you know my story. So going through all the things that I went through to eventually become a SEAL. That was like at the forefront. And then after I became a SEAL, the most important thing to me were the guys around me and getting the job done. And so, it wasn't until towards the end of my career, when my first son was born, that, I was just like, oh, wow, I'm having a family. This is real. This is
happening.
Yeah. And my first son, love him to death. He made me father, and then my second son came along, and that's when I was just like, you know what, I got a family now. I got responsibilities. I'd rather be home with my kids more than be away. So that's when I got out.
And it wasn't something I realized when I first started this podcast for military dads, but I learned it through that the one word that really we don't use enough in the military is legacy. And we often think that the military service is our legacy, but our family is our legacy. And we get that backwards. And even if we get out, we often don't switch that. Like, especially if you lost a friend, like common thing that people run into in the dad world, the military, is they lose a friend and all they can think about is, why did I survive and he died? But they forget the family that they still have, and that like your family continues to still need you despite that sadness that entered your life. And that legacy is so powerful when you recognize that, like, this is my next mission.
No, absolutely. 100%. At the end of the day, for me, just because, for myself, I did 13 and a half years in the military. And I'm 30, I'm going to be 38 this year. So you want to do the math, the majority of my life has been outside of the military. So, it's not what defines me. It's not who I am anymore. I was a veteran. I am a veteran, and I was in the military. But my legacy, you're right, is my kids. And pretty much what I leave to them. So that's why I do everything that I do right now, and work as hard as I work, and stay up late nights and write and just work. The way I work is because I'm trying to make sure that my kids, I set the tone for them. I kind of give them the blueprint that my mother kind of gave me as a young kid. She instilled in me the importance of hard work. Whatever you do it right the first time. You do it with excellence. You don't cut corners. That was essentially, that had eventually become second nature to me, because that's what I saw in my mother, with all the hard work that she put into to provide for my brother and I. So just as that has become second nature to me, my goal is to leave that legacy, so to speak, for my kids, so that they know, hey, if I put in the work, I can achieve my dreams,
And Kobe Bryant, perfect. Like this is, I got a lot of hope when Kobe Bryant passed, because as he passed, what people remembered him for wasn't being a basketball player. They remembered him for being a father. Like that was what everybody, like the dad girl hashtag that went viral. Like, and that was kind of the cement. Like, okay, I think we might be finally getting at that. What you do on this earth is important, but what you leave on this earth is 10 times more valuable.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. No. Yeah. Because you can't take anything with you when you leave this earth.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But the bones and the skin is going to dry up anyway. So at the end of the day, all you can leave is a legacy, lessons, principles, inspiration, motivation, education. That's all you can leave. And so that's my goal, not just for my kids, but I kind of, how I open up my book. My dedication is not just to my kids, but to my grandkids. It's to every future Adeleke generation.
Yeah.
I want to leave lessons for them. But then the book is not just published and shared with just the Adeleke family. You can have experiences shared with the world. So, I wanted to be able to leave lessons for whoever would be willing to pick up the book and read it. And, I wanted them to be able to say, you know what, this guy changed dramatically. I can change dramatically. I don't have to allow my current situation to dictate the rest of my life. So, I hope that legacy that I kind of put in a book will, inspire so many people outside of my family as well.
And if something happened to you, unfortunately, you left a blueprint for how your kids could connect to you later in life. Like if you have the chance to shepherd them in to be adults, like they have a blueprint of how to be more like their dad and how to enter their world a little bit. And that's legacy. Like when you can help gift your kids that blueprint of how to live their life fully, like that's your story is so rich with depth. And that's what I love about military dads is we have such a rich story of adventure, experiences, travel. Like if we can gift half of our experiences and stories to our kids, like that's going to make them that much more stronger, resilient, and even just more confident in who they are to go out into the world and figure out how they fit into it.
Absolutely. 100%.
Like if you can shortcut some of the lessons from your life and make sure your kids don't have to fall down some of those same stairs, like that can literally change a family tree forever and create generational change forever.
Yeah, and that's why my kids have no excuse. My kids have no excuse, and that's something I tell my wife all the time. My wife's like, nope. They don't have any excuse to say, well, I'm a thug or I'm a gangster on this and that. They ain't got no excuse to say I can't make it because they got blueprint. You know what I mean? It's all laid out for them. Have resources, you know what I mean? So many resources that I didn't have. As a matter of fact, their college is already paid for. My daughter hasn't even been born yet, and her college is paid for because of the type of scholarships that they have. And so it's just one of those things where my kids have no excuses at all.
You actually, speaking
that
about
could be a good thing, but that could be a bad thing too.
It could be a bad thing. Yeah. I was just connecting with, we were speaking about legacy and the story of your dad trying to create that complex on that island. And that really, he wanted that to be the shining light for Nigeria. And it's kind of interesting through his passing and your life, you're actually creating a stronger global legacy that Adeleke is known for something globally bigger than one building in Nigeria.
Absolutely. And
the whole idea of what you can do now is even 10 times more bigger than what he ever imagined. Yeah. And that's like, you don't know it when it's all happening, but as you look back, like your legacy is 10 times stronger than what he was trying to achieve in Nigeria.
No, I agree 100%. It's funny, I was thinking about that as I was getting towards the end of the book, because it was like my dad, and just to kind of clarify, it wasn't a building, it was an island. My dad was building an island, and buildings were going to go on. Yeah. And that island still exists to this day, Banana Island. But as I was getting to the end of the book, one thing that really, I mentioned this in the book too, in the last chapter when I tell a story when I'm on a plane flying to Nigeria. The guy who I sat next to, he didn't know who my dad was. And I was just like, wow, this is crazy. Like my dad, he accomplished this great feat in the world by creating one of the first man-made islands in the world, but nobody knows his name. You know what I mean? But here I am, his son, and I'm writing this story in this book, which is going to probably go all over the world. And now because of this book and my story and what I've done and the fact that I never gave up, because if I gave up at any point in my life, I want to have gotten to the point to have a book. I want to be where I'm at today. But because of this book and my life, now the world will now know my dad's name and know what he did. So you're 100% right. I've been able to kind of redeem my father's past in a sense, and kind of do what he set out to do. He set out to essentially, create something that would change the narrative as it related to not just Nigerians, but Africans in general. And I think that the position that I've been in, especially in the last few years, has given me that opportunity to change that narrative and show people all over the world that Nigerians and Africans aren't a bunch of uneducated wild bush people, but we're highly intelligent people with skill sets to create and do amazing things in this world.
I love all of that. And the one part that was really interesting, as far as the perspective, when you realized that the person that inspired you to be a Navy SEAL from the Rock movie, then you were starring in that movie in the Transformers, you had to reflect back and you're like, this is almost how it had to always work out, because of the serendipity in that moment. You weren't actively looking to star in those movies. You weren't looking to find that path. And when you did, and that's the path that ignited the path that you were on, you realize that this could have been just the path that is your family's legacy and how it needed to be created.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, it was definitely, that's why, faith is a big thing to me too, but, because I'm just there's no way, things could have just happened the way they happened, out of the blue. It had to be some type of providence and, a divine intervention, because, the odds of somebody calling me one day and saying, hey, I want you to be in a movie by a director whose first 2 movies inspired me to be a SEAL, that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen, and acting was nowhere near anywhere on my radar at all.
I mean, you weren't even avoiding it. You were like, I am not an actor. I said, stop labeling me one.
Yeah. And I was in grad school getting my master's so that I could, continue to do what I was doing in my corporation, my consulting firm. And I got the phone call. So it all came together, and, I was open to the opportunity. I think that's another thing I try to tell people all the time is that, you got to be open to opportunities, even if it's something that you've never imagined yourself doing. I never imagined myself being an actor, period. I'm sure as a kid you have those dreams. I'm going to be a big fan of that. I want to consider myself a famous actor. And it's on my Instagram, I don't have it as actor. I have occasional actor, because I'm not an actor. I'm an occasional actor. I don't go on auditions.
You're a great actor at acting
stuff. Yeah, exactly. Only time I'm in acting is when somebody calls me up and says, I want to be in this project. And I'm like, sure, but I'm not out there pursuing it. And, I say all that to say, I've been open to the opportunity. I've been open to say, this is something that's outside of my comfort zone, something I'm not used to, but I'm going to try it and see where it goes. And, it's worked out really, really well for me. And it's worked out for me, it's where I really found my gift in writing and creating. I found my passion in doing something that I wasn't passionate about. Once I got on a movie set and I began to learn how a movie set works, and I got on a TV set and another movie set, and I saw, the power of storytelling from behind the scenes, and, just how you can have so many opportunities to create story and produce story. I was just like, acting is great, and I'll continue to do that if the door's open, but I'm a businessman at heart. I want to be behind the scenes. I want to be negotiating deals. I want to be creating content and getting it there. I want to be there versus being in front of the camera.
So I want to take maybe so there's been one question that I've gotten used to asking a lot of military dads, and I was reading your story, and generally in the military, we are either running from something or running to something. And it felt like you were running from something in those early years when you joined the Navy SEALs. Have you kind of unpacked that and figure out what was it you were running from, or what fear was kind of what you were
when I left the Navy?
When you were joining in those early years when you joined the Navy, when you were still maybe haven't tapped into who you are and to.
Yeah. When I joined the Navy, I mean, I would say I was running to something. I was running to a better opportunity, to a better life. Because I think I finally came to the realization that the life I had been trying to create for myself, I created it, but it was a monster. And the monster that I created was now coming back to destroy its master, right? Yeah. And so I created this monster, and it almost destroyed me. right? It almost, you read stories, so you know the things that happened to me that played a huge role in me getting out of the legal activities that I've been involved in and eventually making the choice to join the Navy. But it was like, all right, I tried all of these things. None of them have worked. I'm back to zero. If I don't do something else, I'm going to end up dead or in prison. So I ran to a better opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, I need a fresh start. I need to find something that can help me get to untapped, to tap into that potential that I know is there. I just don't know how to find it, and the Navy really helped me find that potential. It really did. For everybody, everybody's different, right? For some people, it's traveling the world helps them find the potential within. Going to college helps them find the potential, helps them find their track, what they really would do in life. But for me, it was joining the military really helped me find that untapped potential and say, wow, like I can take a beating. I can run miles. I can swim. I am smart. I am educated. I can learn more. I can be part of the best. So, I was running to a better opportunity.
That's awesome. And so another part that military dads and every veteran kind of goes through is they often just assimilate the identity of the uniform because they really don't know who they were before, or they feel like a failure or busted or maybe rejected. And so they identify like, okay, I can adopt this identity. And then they go through almost an identity crisis when they take it off. Did you struggle with any of that identity crisis, like assuming the role of a Navy SEAL and like having that be who you are, but then also trying to figure out really what that gold was inside that you were trying to pull out?
When I got out the military?
When you got out, or even during the time before you kind of had your waking with when you were in that church, like, was there any moment where you were trying to struggle identifying who Remi was?
No, never. Because because by the time I was in the team, I already had a strong, faith. My faith was already strong by the time I got to teams. But I always knew who I was. I always knew in the teams, first and foremost, I'm a child of God. That's the first thing, and everything else in life is second, and so, I know that I knew who I was. And so I never got caught up in, I'm a Navy SEAL and that's my identity, even now, what I'm saying? Like, I'm not, my Instagram says former Navy SEAL. I'm not a Navy SEAL anymore. You know what I mean? Like, when I got out of the military, I realized that's not who I am. Like, now I'm a husband, now I'm a father, first and foremost. And then after that, you know what I mean? Whatever job I take on, then that's who I am at the time. Like, I open up, like, I consider myself a writer. Like, that's who I am now, because that's what I do on a daily basis. So I'm not in the military anymore. I'm a veteran, but I'm not in the military anymore. So, I haven't had a problem, with identity or holding on to. I'm still a SEAL, and I still got to talk a certain way and act a certain way, and I miss the glory days and all that kind of stuff. I miss the guys that I was around. I mean, if there's anything I miss the men that and women that I got to serve and be around on a daily basis and go do the job that I was blessed to be able to do. But outside of that, man, I'm content with who I am, and I'm content with the life that I have now, and I'm excited about the future that I have, which is not in the military.
Mm-hmm. That you're not, that going back to legacy, that your legacy isn't your service; it's just a chapter of your life.
Chapter. Yeah.
What advice would you have out there? Because that identity is something that a lot of dads suffer when they go on the other side. Like they go from Superman to Clark Kent and they lose themselves. Is there any like talking points or any advice that you give for people to dive into that, to find their identity outside of wearing that uniform?
I would just say, first thing that comes to mind for me is find something that you're passionate about. Find something else that you're passionate about. Just like you were passionate about the military, find something else that you're just like, you wake up every morning, it's like, man, I want to do that. Like, I love doing that. I can't wait to get to my job, my desk, or wherever it is, and can do that. And for me, that's helped tremendously. Like, every single, like, it's funny because there'll be weeks where I won't sleep through the night. And it's not because of stress. It's because I wake up in the middle of the night and my mind just starts going, and I'm excited about what's going to happen the next day. I'm ready to get to my desk. Like it happened last night. Last night I got up at 3 a.m. and I couldn't go back to sleep because I had my laptop right next to my bed, and like I wanted to like open up my laptop and start writing, start working on something that I needed to get done this morning and send to my agent. And so that's the main thing that I would say to people, veterans, find something that you're super passionate about. As you, something that you are almost as passionate or even more passionate than your military service. And for me, it's a few things. First and foremost, it's my family. I'm passionate about my family, wife and my kids. My kids, like my wife, she works every Wednesday, Thursday, and every other Friday. And so she for work, and guess what? It's me and my 3 sons. You know what I mean? And I'm passionate about, I love those mornings where it's just us 3 watching cartoons and, we're joking around and we're throwing the football, to each other. And, we're listening to music and we're just hanging out. Like, I love that. I'm passionate about that. It makes me forget about, any issues that I may have at work. And then, after that, next thing I do when my nanny gets here is I'm at the gym. I'm working out. Here, gyms become my garage, but I'm working out. I'm passionate about working out. I love staying fit. I love being healthy. And then, from there, I'm at my office working. I'm passionate about that. And all of these things that I'm passionate about, it completely makes me forget about the old life that I've had before. It makes me completely forget about jumping out of planes with my guys and going on missions and scuba diving and shooting guns and all that other stuff because, that's not who I was. That's not who I am anymore.
And you're kind of talking about like finding your next mission a little bit, like find your next purpose. Because that's often what people talk about. They miss is that purpose, that definition, those clear targets where they needed to go. And when it's your responsibility to go there, it's up to you to try to find it. And that's often not an easy thing to figure out. And what I love about the way you were framing that is it allows you to step into the best version of yourself. Like, you're literally crafting the best version of every day. And the way you talked about the mornings, like that's when you realize like the passion of fatherhood, like that's an anchor point for a long time that you can continue to anchor yourself in. Again, that's the time you invest in your kids is going to change for years down the road. Like, you actually have no idea how all these little deposits are going to change your life. But that's where a lot of that impact comes from. We talk about in the podcast because so many dads get it backwards that like to simply love your kids is just to give them the gift of your time. Like playing some simple game with them when they're at a young age like that. They just want your presence. They don't really care what you're doing. It's the stupid things that they'll remember that you did together. It wasn't something fancy or expensive.
100%. No, that's 100%. Yeah, my kid. That's why the games that my kids make up. It's just like, wait, what's the rules in this game? They just make it, but it's like, play with me, right? And so, like, you're right. That's the stuff that they're going to remember, and that's the stuff that really, it just blesses them, and it's worth more than buying them a big bowl of ice cream.
Or a big piece of junk from the Target or something that they say they want, but that's in the closet 10 days later, and they're waiting for something else.
Yeah, 100%.
So let's maybe take a little bit of a moment to when not having a dad for most of your life that you can remember. What was it like when you became a dad? And especially a father to sons like that, what was that process like? Was that scary, or were you confident and you were just stepping into it? Or was there like a growth that you had to go through to kind of become that?
No, it wasn't scary, and it wasn't a hard transition for 2 reasons. One, before I had kids, years before I had kids, I was a youth pastor at my church. And so I was still in the Navy at the same time in the SEAL teams. And so there were a bunch of kids who became like my kids. And a lot of them didn't have dads because the church was in the inner city, in the African-American inner city area. And a lot of the kids didn't have dads. And so they had dads, but their dads weren't in their lives. And so, I kind of became their dads, So like got to the point where like, I know there were 2 families in particular. One woman, she had 3 sons. One of the sons would get in trouble at school. She would call me up and say, so-and-so got in trouble. You need to come talk to him. Well, here he is. Talk to him. I'm tired of dealing with him. And then another mother, same thing. Her son would get in trouble. and she would put me on the phone with him. So I had a lot of time, I had a lot of preparation kind of playing dad to a large group of about 15 kids, for a certain amount of time. And I made mistakes, but I really began to learn what it meant to just some principles as it relates to being a father, kind of what you spoke to earlier about being present. I found like, being a youth pastor, part of my job was to share the Bible with the kids, right? But one thing that I learned early on was that the way you connect with young people, well, I think in my opinion, all people, but specifically young people, is to, pull them outside of the church building and just do something with them. Mm-hmm. And I would pull these kids out of the inner city, and we would go to like upscale restaurants that they would never be able to afford to go. Their parents could never afford to take them to. I'd be like, hey, here's a restaurant. Here's a fork that you eat your salad with. Here's a fork that you eat your meal with. And they would just be amazed. I would take them to the movie theaters. I would take them to Dave and Buster's. And these kids were they felt like, man, like this dude cares about me. Like he's spending time with me outside of the church. And he's there for me if my mother calls. And that meant so much to those kids. So I say that to say, that helped me a lot. So when I became a father, I kind of had some principles. And then another thing that helped me tremendously was, just being a SEAL. Being a SEAL, you're trained. You have to learn how to adapt really, really fast. And that's something that, they kind of beat into you in buds, SEAL training, where, if you can't adapt to a new evolution, if you can't adapt to a standard or, a wave smashing in your face right away, you're not going to make it through this program. And so, that's the thing about the SEAL. And the cool thing about the SEAL teams, over the course of since the SEAL teams were created in 1962, we've always been able to adapt. When Vietnam, when SEALs were created out of UDT, so the UDT were the original SEALs, so, when John JFK was like, hey, we need a unit that can go to Vietnam and conduct guerrilla warfare and go behind enemy lines and get after it. Hey, let's use these UDT guys, call them SEALs. And so UDT adapted into the SEALs. And then, in the 80s when terrorism began to, would emerge, the SEAL teams became a counterterrorism unit, right? And then, we became a unit that would train other forces in the 90s and do certain things. And then after 9/11 kicked off, that we became guys, that our mission set continued to change. And I talk a little bit about what I did in the book as it related to intelligence stuff, but we began to adapt, and some guys began to adapt and change into that. And so the SEAL teams have always been a community that's been able to evolve and adapt to whatever situation, good or bad. And again, that goes back to buds. We have to be able to adapt and learn really, really fast. So, and my wife, she tells me all the time, Remi, you just know how to adapt to certain things, no matter how bad they are. And goes back to my training. And so when I had this kid, when my son was born, and the doctor said, here's your baby, it was just like, I'm a dad now. Like, let's go. You know what I mean? Like, so...
you were used to life changing suddenly, and it wasn't something, because a lot of people that have a kind of a normal life for years at a time, that's a very big sudden change, and they aren't used to that sudden change at all.
No, 100%. I'm used to sudden change. I mean, and that's part of being in the film and TV industry, because things are always changing. Like one day you're working on a movie set, next day you might be working on a TV show. One day you might be working with one producer, next day you're working with another producer. So it's like, it's just my life. It's just my life.
And it's every day you wake up and you go with that same mindset that it'll all work out and you'll figure it out and you'll get through it.
Yep. And I go through life with the mindset, something bad is going to happen. It's just life. And, and I'm just trying to be prepared for it. I have a saying, it's not my saying, but it's a saying that I heard years ago, and I've kind of taken it upon myself, and it's really rooted in who I am today. But it's, prepare for peacetime, train at peacetime, so you're ready for war, right? Because it's not a question of if the war is going to happen. The question is, when is the war going to happen? And when I say war, I'm speaking figuratively. And so, I'm always trying to prepare in different ways. And that's why people ask me, this whole coronavirus thing has not been, it's like business as usual. I mean, it is.
Life is changing. That's what happens every day.
It's such, because, I've gone through a lot of hard things, and, but I prepared for this time. Like, look at the gym. Like I built up my garage gym. Even though I went to a gym every day, for the most part, I built up my garage gym years before coronavirus. So gyms closed down, boom, I prepared in peacetime, I'm ready for the war. I just work out in my garage, you know what I mean? Like,
yep.
I set myself up with certain jobs and certain things financially. Coronavirus comes, hey, I'm not skipping it. All our bills are paid. We're not. My assistant is still working, getting his paycheck, on time. So it's like I field teams have always taught me, always be prepared, always be preparing. So if something happens, you're ready to deal with it. And so, the coronavirus thing hasn't been, my wife is a doctor. It hasn't been something that's been tripping her out. She's just like, all right, this is as usual. Let me go to work every Wednesday and Thursday as I usually did. And the Fridays I usually do. And then, I'll just do, just be more careful, how I see patients, and so, preparing peacetime so you're ready for the war.
I like that. There was a guy I just had in the podcast. He describes it as be ready for the pop quizzes. Because everybody can prepare for the test, but no one really prepares for the pop quizzes.
Yeah.
And it's the idea that most people don't have more than $500 to handle an expense. And now this happens, and like pop quizzes are going to happen. It's pretty much a certainty. And I like what you said there about always adapting. And I'm sure you hanging out with Marines on Camp Pendleton, like part of the Marine Corps is improvise, adapt, and overcome. So like that adaptation, like my brain quickly can solve a problem with a lot of random information. Because that's just what you have to do under pressure. You just got to figure it out. Like you don't have any other way to do it. And that's fatherhood. Like there's no freaking manual. There's nothing. All your day, you just figure it out and take what you've got and you try to make the best out of what you got as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
When the question that I really like asking, I'm interested in what your perspective would be on it. If you could go back to, let's say, the Remi right before joining the Navy. So you've decided to go to the Navy. And you're getting ready to go, you've gotten your approval from the judges, everything is cleared. If you could give yourself a sticky note piece of paper of advice, but it only can fit on a sticky note piece of paper, what would you kind of like wish you did more of, or something that you wish you would have known way back then before your life got started?
Nothing.
Nothing?
Nothing.
I was trying to predict what your answer would be, and the only one I could come to the question was like, it'll all work out. Like that was probably the only thing that you could, because you never know, and it's a lot of when you're young, you're like you're up to the gambit of life.
Nothing, because regardless of what I said to myself, I know that me before I went to the Navy wouldn't listen.
I've heard that before. Like most people could send themselves this advice and it'd go right in the trash.
Yeah. And then another reason why is because I like the pop quizzes, as you eloquently put it, because when all of the failures that I've had in life have been such a blessing, because I've gained such great lessons out of them, and I wouldn't want to give myself the answer to any test, even if it was a small test at that age, because I would cheat myself out of that failure, and by cheating myself out of failure, I'm not going to learn what I needed to learn in order to get me to where I need to be now. And so that's why I want to say anything.
There was Ryan Mickler. I don't know if you know who he is, but he said something. He answered that question. He was like, I would have told myself to take more risks. And I would say you probably took that advice before you knew it was good advice, because you were consistently always leveling up and taking massive risks, like even your health. You were gambling in Vegas every day. You were growing. Like even when you were jumping out of the airplane, I was like, there's no way he jumped with that hurt ankle. And then you got through it. I'm like, this guy is just nuts.
Yeah. It's funny. I'm always betting on me. I'm always betting the house on me. And sometimes I lose. A lot of times I lose. But hey, what's funny as I got older, I've just learned not to. My time has become so much more valuable, especially now that I have kids. So it's like, I can't gamble as much as I used to just because of my time. It was funny, like this guy, I was having a meeting with a producer yesterday. It was like, so do you want to write this project on spec? And when we call in Hollywood, when you write a project on spec and do speculation, it's like you're speculating that this might sell. And it's just like, no, I'm not going to take hours, days to write something that may not
Yeah, at this time it's family currency. It's your dad
Exactly.
currency you're trading.
Exactly. So if you want me to write it, then you need to pony up the money to pay me to do it.
Put some food on my table for me.
Yeah. I'm not going to do work for you that you're going to benefit off of tremendously if a paycheck gets cut, but you're not putting sweat equity down. So
there's one last area I want to dive into, and I think it was kind of like where you kind of had like a before and after moment when you were doing those swim tests and you really had to step into that extreme ownership of your life, to quote Jocko there. What was that moment for you, like when you really had to be self-accountable for yourself? Because that's something that not a lot of people truly step into, and they can go their entire life without ever really being accountable for their own decisions.
Which part? What part?
But when you didn't realize that you had all these opportunities to pass the swim test, and you were just kind of like making excuses of why you didn't need to go to the pool, and then when you failed that, and then you had to be like, but you had to grow through that and realize like that was my failure. Like you had to accept full responsibility of that. That's something like a big moment for you when you realized that I wasn't really putting everything I had into it.
That was right before I got kicked out of SEAL training the first time. The only time I only got kicked out of training once. but like after I got kicked out of training, that's when I really looked back on my life and I did the self-examination and realized that the reason why I got kicked out it wasn't anybody's fault, but it was my fault. And that's the first step to getting over a failure and learning your lesson from the failure. And that first step is admitting that it's nobody's fault but yours. Taking responsibility. And once you take responsibility for that failure, then you can, honestly move forward and begin to learn. And so, that was the first, and that was key. That was huge for me, because once I took responsibility, then I realized, okay, it's my fault. Okay, now I know that it's my fault. How do I fix this fault so I don't make that mistake again? Instead of, it's not my fault. So how can that person, fix themselves so this doesn't happen to me again, right? Because if you're blaming somebody else, then you're not going to be able to find a lesson. But if you're blaming yourself, then you're going to be able to say, okay, look back and say, what did I do wrong to get me to where I'm at now? And now fix it. So, that was huge for me.
And there's something like, especially in 2020, self-accountability and self-ownership is not something that American society does really well. And it's something, as a father, you have to recognize that if your kids don't turn out or your daughter brings home someone bad, that's really comes back to a lot on you. Like you missed some of the key points on raising your kids. And you have to accept responsibility. It's not your daughter's fault. It's how you brought yourself into her life. And that's a big moment where so much, and even through coronavirus, my kind of like one of my biggest lessons is I've reflected deeper on what I have control over and what I don't. And then truly taking extreme ownership of that, what I can control. That part is something that we don't often look towards. But like for you, when you were running before and like achieving great things and you wanted to go somewhere, but after that, man, you were an all out sprint, like Olympic type marathon sprint to exactly where you wanted to be in life. That was your moment where there wasn't no excuses. I'm going to put in every ounce of work to get where I want. And I'm not where I want because of my own actions, not someone else's.
Exactly.
And I think it's interesting how brilliant the Navy SEAL instructors are because of how finely tuned they are to that bullshit that comes up during training. Like, they're finally sensitive to it. Yeah, they see it straight through.
They see hundreds of guys, if not 1,000+ guys every year. So they're just like, we've seen this game, we've seen this type of person 100 times. So they know the game.
Yeah.
And then they've gone through SEAL training too. So again, they know the games because they've been there. They know the. Yeah,
it's not the first time. You think you're going to be like outsmart the instructors, but like they have a sixth sense for bullshit on this case, and that's really where you had to dig deep. And once you dug deep, I mean, you probably would have been missing out on a huge portion of who you were if you somehow got through the system in that first version of Remi. Like the second version of Remi, like. That SEAL that came out is probably 10 times stronger than if you would have got through the first time without that hard failure.
Yeah, I'd have probably killed myself from pride. Like pride would have really, if I became a SEAL that first time, would have been a bad bad situation.
And it's going back to how all your life has happened for you instead of to you.
Yeah. I'd had too much power, and with no humility is a dangerous combination for anybody.
Yeah. Well, I have really loved this interview. To wrap up, I'd like to ask you one question. If you could gift dads one piece of wisdom that you love being about a dad, or that you really stepped into, or that you really appreciate if someone gave you a piece of advice, what's a piece of advice you want to leave for military dads as a parting gift?
I would just say don't, and this is a lesson that I just learned in the past few weeks with this whole coronavirus thing is, don't rely on the education system, whether private or public school. And I say that because my kids go to great private school. And, my oldest son, he struggled, for most of the year in school this year. And, the standards are probably a bit higher than the public school standards, but still, like struggling. And at the end of the day, that can affect his self-confidence moving forward and other things. So, one of the areas he struggled in, the main area he struggled in was reading and writing. And I'm a writer.
The irony there doesn't escape me.
Yeah, I'm a writer. And so, I told my wife, with this whole coronavirus thing, I'm like, he's not going to struggle. So what I started doing with my son was I started teaching him how to read. And he's reading now. In the 2 weeks that I started working with him, he's reading now. And I was just like, dang, why didn't I do this months ago? Why didn't I do this? And I know why I didn't, because I was just like, oh, I'm paying for this private school. He's going to private school. He'll get it there. But the thing about private school or public school, you'll have at the most 2 teachers in the classroom and minimum maybe 15 students, or 15 students, and then it goes up from there. And so those two, it's impossible for those 2 teachers to give all the attention to one student, but when you're home, you're able to give them that attention. And so in this time of having to homeschool our kids, our oldest son, his confidence is growing as it relates to school. He's not whining about school, and he's learning, and he's getting better. And so the biggest lesson that I can give to veteran dads, all dads right now is, man, like, take advantage of this time with your kids. What I mean by that is this coronavirus thing. Your kid's not going to school. Take advantage of this time and, like, get in the books with them. If they're struggling with math, like, help them with the math. Like, just pour into them. Even if it's just 30 minutes a day, like, take that time to really help them advance. Like, they're your responsibility. You know what I mean? If they fail school, you're not going to be able to say, well, it's the school's fault. No, at the end of the day, it's your responsibility. Like, mold them into the people that you want them to be. And, again, that was my fault. I wasn't doing that. I was relying on the school system. And I will never do that again for the rest of all our kids. Like, I will be with them. Hey, you got your school done? Let's do something extra. What are you struggling with? Let's work on that so that you can get better. And, man, like, if I started doing what I have been doing in the last 2 weeks as it relates to reading, with my son, when he first started the school year, he would be like way ahead, right? So that's the thing. Do more involved in education.
Do you feel like homeschooling is now getting closer to your heart, of like completely taking ownership?
Yeah, me and my wife talked about it. Yeah, me and my wife talked about that, and I was just like, I can't see sending my kids back to school. I just can't, because with everybody learns differently, but I'm starting to see that my son, he thrives when somebody's there, when he has that one-on-one. And I'm me and my wife were talking, I was like, I don't even want to send him back to private school. Like, I'd rather be able to, buy a curriculum and, we work out the times. Maybe we hire like a teacher to take over, like, 2 days of the week or 3 days of the week to give us a break. But I think that the way to go is to homeschool.
And you've definitely engineered your life in a way that you can have time, location, and family freedom and money freedom to really, like, you don't have to be where you're at in your home to do your work, and you can teach your kids anywhere in the country. Like, you can literally And I've always liked the idea that homeschooling is less about maybe the curriculum, but it's more about like letting learning happen by going to a museum or going outside and looking at ants, or like letting their curiosity be the guidance for where they learn or what they find. And I've been hanging out with a lot of homeschooling networks as the world changes now. And a lot of them have like, the kids will eventually figure out and get ready. They'll want to read when they're ready. And you just kind of coach them through their curiosity. And if they like doing something, then you make sure they have a chance to do that thing and figure out who they are. And like that part is something that is really interesting to me because it's something that I desire. And you've already kind of got your life that way where you could kind of create that life where it's not so much about like the curriculum. It's more about like, how do we engineer our life to make sure that our life is the lessons in itself?
Yeah.
And I could definitely see, I don't know if you got it in your heart, but I could definitely see you writing a children's book very similar to what Jocko did. Because I was to my daughter and she loved those books. And your story, or even like taking the lesson with your son and the reading and how a Navy SEAL helped his son learn how to read. Like that is like your ability to create a story around that and use it as some type of lesson to help kids get through those early years like Jocko did. That would be an amazing book. I don't know if that's ever been on your heart, but
no, I thought about doing a children's book. I just haven't really focused in on the topic. But that's a good one. That's a good place to start.
The R&D lab is happening right behind you as you homeschool.
There you go. That's true.
Yeah, you've got the living laboratory to try to figure out what the right recipe for that book might be.
Absolutely. I just got to get a great illustrator to illustrate the cards.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciated this interview, Remi, and I still kind of feel like a little kid in a candy store because I'm just reading your book and getting this interview and being able to ask your questions is just a crazy moment. And I know you're just a regular guy, and that's what you realize when you talk to dads. It's just we're all dads, we're all figuring it out, and we have that common thread. And that's what I love about you is how you've kind of just grown through your life. So I just really want to appreciate you taking your time out of your day and sharing your wisdom with us on the podcast and being a part of us for this time.
No, absolutely. Thanks for having me on, man. It's been an honor and a blessing, brother.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Whew, that interview was amazing. Getting ready to get this episode out to you guys, I was just reminded of the pure gold that Remi gave us. And I hope that you got a lot out of that episode because that episode literally changed my life and his book changed my life. I read that just a few weeks prior to coronavirus hitting, and that book really enabled me to understand that transformation begins with yourself. Transformation begins with extreme accountability, to quote Jocko, and that extreme accountability can really move your life forward. And that transformation, that objective has really inspired me to start 75 Hard. And at the time of this recording, today is day 54. And I'm excited on my way to day 75, where I get to step into a version of myself that I've never really met before, because that extreme amount of accountability has not been with me in a long time, not since the Marine Corps days. And I would say at this point, I am operating at a level higher than I was in the Marine Corps. So that just excites me. But that book, Transformed, really gave me the courage that anything I want in my life is possible. I just need to take the steps to get it, and that can happen. Some of the things I want to make sure that you got out of that episode is putting in the work to achieve your dreams. That was something that Remi talked about a lot. Talk about being open to new opportunities. Don't get so stuck on the path that you're on. That was so important that Remi pointed out there. Finding your identity after serving. It's something that a lot of veterans face. And if you want to have a conversation about having that issue, or if you're feeling that way, or if you're getting ready to transition, go ahead and reach out to me, because I would love to have a conversation. That's something I love helping reflect back that value. Go to militaryveterandad.com/call, and you can go ahead and schedule a quick call with me. And I'd love to get to know you, what kind of problems you're facing, and how we can help transform your life on the other side of transition. Being able to adapt and learn quickly, that was something I really took away from Remi, is he has been training his entire life for adapting and overcoming the obstacles that he has in his life. And even when coronavirus hit, he was already prepared. It didn't catch him off guard, because he did prepare in peacetime and he was training for war the entire time. That was a big thesis that I took away from this episode, and I hope that you took it away from it as well. And again, if you want to have a phone call, I'd love to get to know you and help you understand how a transformation is within you. Go to militaryveterandad.com/call, and you can go ahead and book some time with me. Don't forget that we also launched freedadcourse.com, where I launched 5 simple lessons, and they're 10-minute audio lessons in each one. And those lessons on how to create more friends in your life. And I want to leave you with one last quote. I say it often if you're listening to the podcast. The amount of opportunity you have in your life is directly proportional to the amount of strangers you talk to daily. So go check out freedadcourse.com, learn how to say hello, and learn what the power of hello can do and how it can transform your world. And on the other side is the life that you've always waited for. Dads, signing off, and I'll talk to you again on Friday.